Hi, it's V with Crafting Daily Dose, and today I have a pop-up alternative for you from the November 2021 paper pumpkin called Gifts Galore. I've used one of the die cuts from the kit to decorate the front, and then on the inside, ta-da! That's pretty fun, right? The Christmas tree is a neat surprise that extends out of the card. This project was inspired by Tanu Creative, and I've got that link for you down below. I made some modifications and I'm excited to show you how to create this card, so let's get started. These are the pieces for the pop-up card. The card base is a standard A2 card base in landscape orientation. I've used basic white thick cardstock, and it is 11 inches across by 4 1/4 inches high, scored down the middle along the long side at 5 1/2 inches. These two pieces of basic white cardstock are a part of the mechanism. This first one, it's just under 7 inches across. It's like 6 15/16, but it doesn't have to be that exact. And then it's 1 inch high. It's been scored at 1 inch, 3 inches, 4 inches, and 6 inches. This piece here is 4 1/4 inches across by 1 inch high. This one is going to need some score lines too, but we'll do that together. These two pieces of cardstock are to create optional layers for the front of the card. The Poppy Parade piece is 5 3/8 inches across by 4 1/8 inch in height. The basic white cardstock is 5 1/4 inches across by 4 inches in height. Now I have these optional layers on my card for two reasons. The first is because I think it looks nice and stepped up to have some extra layers there. And the second reason is because the little bit of added weight on the front of a pop-up card helps that front cover to stay down a little bit flatter. But it's not critical to have the layers, and you could put all the decoration for the front directly onto the card base itself. Now I'm using two die cuts from the kit for this card. The first is that large Christmas tree. This is going to be the piece that pops up on the inside of the card. And then I'm also using this die cut with the gifts in it. I'm going to cut it down and place it on the front of the card. That makes decorating the front really quick and easy so that I can concentrate on the inside. And I know that it's going to coordinate perfectly with the tree. Now, if you don't want to use two different die cuts on your card, or if you've already used this kind up, then here are some more options for you. Don't forget about the stamp set that came with the kit. So for this one, I just used basic white cardstock. I stamped the diagonal box shape in the Flirty Flamingo ink that came with it, and then I stamped the bow in Poppy Parade. And then I fussy cut this out, which just means that I cut around the outline with my snips. So you can cut these out in different colors. You can double them to make them bigger or trim them down to make them smaller and create your own set of presents. This little present was made from part of the snowman. So for my previous card, I had used just the top of the snowman, and then I had some left over down here. I trimmed that off because the back has this nice pattern on it. And then I used some twine from the kit to wrap around and make a little present. So these are some other options that you have for decorating the front of your card if you don't want to use that second die cut. I'll be stamping with Memento Tuxedo black ink. These are optional, but I'm using the Wink of Stella brush to add some shimmer to my ornaments on the tree. And then I've die cut out a little star from gold foil. This comes from one of the dies in the Give It a Whirl set. So in addition to the interactive dies in that set, there are also a bunch of decorative ones, and this is one of them. And now that we have our pieces, we're ready to get started. I gave you some dimensions and score lines already, but we have a couple more pieces that we need to finish preparing. This is that shorter strip of basic white cardstock, the one that's 4¼ inches by 1 inch, and I'm going to go ahead and make some marks on this. So the first thing that I want to do is I'm going to put this at 1 inch, and I am going to make a mark on the bottom edge of this piece at 1 inch. You can use your pencil or something light. I'm using my friction pen so that you can see what I'm doing, and I'll be able to erase this later with my heat tool. Now I'm going to move my paper to 2 inches right here, and I'm going to make another mark, but this time on the top edge. So this is what my strip looks like. 1 inch on the bottom edge, 2 inches on the top edge. And now what I'm going to do is to make score lines that connect from this corner here down to that mark, and then from that mark up to the last one. So it's going to create a V shape. So I'm going to put this underneath my trimmer, and I'm aligning this corner along the center of my trimmer track, and then aligning this mark as well. I'm moving my darker blade out of the way because this one would cut, and I don't want to cut. I just want to score with my lighter blade here. So that's what it looks like so far. I'll fold it so you can see. Okay, now I'm going to align these 2 marks along the center of my track. I'll turn it this way. And I'm holding it in place with my other hand. And I'll fold it again. I'm doing both of these as mountain folds away from me. That's what it looks like. And now this piece is done. Now at home, you'll want to go ahead and erase those marks that you made, but I'm leaving them on for right now just so that you can see. Next, I'm going to take my Christmas tree die cut and I'm going to trim this down. So I'm going to turn it this way, and I'm going to align the bottom edge of the tree with the 2 inch mark. And I'm taking my time to make sure that it's lined up pretty level here. This side is maybe a little bit too high up. Okay, that looks pretty good to me. So I'm going to hold this down. And this time I'm going to use my darker blade for cutting. Once I've cut off the bottom 2 inches of my tree, I'm going to move this over, and I'm going to put this new cutoff line at 2 inches. And because we have these vertical guidelines all the way down, you can make sure that everything is lined up nicely. So basically what we've done is we've separated the tree into 3 different sections. Here's that die cut with all of the presents. I'm going to go ahead and fussy cut off these 2 here on the bottom. Next, I'm going to go ahead and cut into this triangular space, and I'm going to even out the margin that's along the bottom of the red one. So that looks pretty good, except if you look very closely, the edge of this one is a little bit higher than this one. So that means that when you place them down, It looks like this one is just kind of hanging out in midair, which looks a little bit odd. So I'm going to go ahead and put this underneath my trimmer. I'm lining up this flat edge with the top of my trimmer. I'm going to bring it so that the point of this present is right along the middle of the trimmer track, so like this. And then once that's lined up, so basically I've sacrificed a little bit off of the bottom of this pink one. But now it can rest on my card, and this one now just looks like it's leaning over a bit, not suspended in the air. I just have a little bit of stamping to do for this card. This is the front panel of the card, and I'm going to stamp my sentiment right here in the corner. Now, if you chose not to do the layers, then you would be stamping directly onto your card base. I've positioned my die cut just so that I know what space I have left for the sentiments. I'm using one of the stamps from the kids, and I'm stamping in Memento Tuxedo Black. I'm stamping on top of the foam mat from my Stamparatus because I like to have a little layer of cushion under my paper when I'm using clear photopolymer stamps. It's time to work on the mechanism. This is that longer piece of basic white cardstock, and I'm going to go ahead and fold all these score lines as mountain folds. So you can start to see that it forms a little box, and then there are these two short flaps on either end. One of them is going to be shorter than the other, so let's find out which one that is. I'm going to go ahead and put this into the crease here and fold the other piece over. And I can see that there's an overhang. So that tells me that this is my longer flap, and then this is my shorter flap. If I had done it the other way, when I put this one into the crease, and then I fold the other one over, there's a gap because this one is shorter. So I want my shorter one on the inside. That's the reason why we made it shorter, is so that there wouldn't be an overhang and the angles could be more square. So I'm going to go ahead and put some glue along this tab. All right, now I'm going to fold down my piece flat like this, and I'm going to take this longer flap and I'm going to fold it over. Now I'm going to work down on my surface here, and I'll go in now and reinforce these folds with my bone folder. So now we know that our box can sit perfectly flat in one direction. Now we're going to open up the box and we're going to squash it down in the opposite direction. And this very frequently happens. It doesn't fold perfectly flat in the other direction. And that's just because there's always going to be some imperfection when you're making those score lines. So see how there's a little bit of a bubble there? What I'll do is I'm going to sort of force it down flat and then reinforce that with my bone folder, basically forcing a new fold that's a little bit scooted over. It won't really be noticeable to you when you're trying to look at that crease, but it does make a difference in terms of being able to have your piece lie flat in this direction as well as the other. So now this little box support structure is ready. Now here's that shorter strip that has the V-shaped folds on it. Before we go further, we're going to go ahead and test to make sure that our angles here are good. And the way to do that is to go ahead and fold these up as mountain folds, so you're folding away from you. This is what it looks like from the front, and then from the back, what you should see is that these edges are lined up nicely and there's no overlap between them. If they line up nicely, everything is nice and flush. This means that you've got a good 45-degree angle here and you're ready to move forward. So let's go ahead and unfold it back again. Here are my folds on the left-hand side. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip it this way, and I'm going to mark off 1 inch. I'm just going to use the grid paper here. You can also use a ruler or your trimmer. So I'm counting off 4 of these blocks, 1, 2, 3, 4. That gives me 1 inch. And this is a guideline for putting glue onto the back of this piece. So again, here's the front and here's the back. So I'm only putting glue on the right-hand side of that little guideline. I'm going to flip it back so that we're looking at the front. And I'm going to bring in that box structure that we had created earlier. So this one. You'll notice that there are short panels and long panels. We are going to adhere this down to the bottom edge of one of the long panels, and it doesn't really matter which one. So I'm just going to choose this one. And I'll show you from the side. All I'm doing is I'm squashing this up just so that I can get it to be flat, so I can work with it down here on my table. And while that glue is setting up, I'm using my grid lines to check and make sure that everything is square. So you should have a nice 90-degree angle right here. That looks good. So let me give you another view of what the mechanism looks like so far. The folds are on this side, and then there's a little box hanging out off to the side. My favorite part is always installing the mechanism because that's when the magic happens. So here's the card base. I've gone ahead and reinforced this fold very well with my bone folder. And then on the inside of the card base, you'll notice that I made a little mark. This is just a little bit more than 1 inch down from the top edge, and I've made it on the left-hand side of the card, so it's just left of the crease. Now here's my mechanism. I'm going to put glue just on this corner triangular flap right here. I'm making sure to get it all the way to the edge and all the way to the crease. So here's the mechanism. I'm going to go ahead and rotate it clockwise, so now it looks like an L. And then I'm going to flip it over. The glue is now on the underside, and I'm going to put it down so that it just covers the mark that I made. And I'm going to put the edge right up against the crease. While that's setting up, I'll go ahead and flip this fold up and fold my box down flat. And what I'm checking for at this point is to make sure that this lower edge here looks pretty straight. I can use my Christmas tree die cut as a guide. So if I line up the Christmas tree with that edge, it should look pretty straight. If you check the angles on this mechanism like we talked about, you should end up with a good result. Once that glue has set up, I'm going to go ahead and flip this back along this fold. And now I'm going to put glue along this short tab on the box. So it's this piece right here. Remember, all the way to the creases and all the way to the edges. Once the glue is on, I'll fold my box down flat, flip it back up, and press down so that it has a chance to set up. Now what you'll want to do is go ahead and test your mechanism. The first time that you fold it, you might have to guide the paper a little bit, but it should collapse down like this and be able to fold pretty flat. When you open the card back up, you can see how that mechanism starts to work. All right, all we have to do is glue on some decorations and we're almost done. I'm going to glue on the Christmas tree pieces. And before I do, I'm going to add a little bit of Wink of Stella wherever the ornaments are. If you haven't used this before, it's basically like a brush pen that deposits very fine shimmer or glitter as you paint with it. It's hard to see on camera, but in real life, it adds a really special touch. I'm also going to go ahead and add that star to the top of the tree. Now, starting with the bottom of the tree, I'm going to go ahead and put glue, and I'm going to adhere it directly to the back of the card. I'm centering it horizontally, and I'm putting it right next to the edge of my mechanism. Next, I'm going to do the middle panel, and for that, what I'll do is I'll put glue directly on the mechanism. I'm going to put it all in this area here, and then I'm just going to sort of guesstimate where that tree is going to be. Better to put not enough and add more rather than too much. I'm testing to make sure that everything still closes properly and that I haven't developed a catch point down here. Everything's operating smoothly. Finally, I'm going to put glue right in this last little panel. It's always good to keep testing the mechanism to make sure that nothing unexpected happens. That works well. I like to save decorating the front panel for last, just in case anything goes wrong in here where it's the most critical. I'm just using Stampin' Seal and glue here. Usually I don't use dimensional foam stickers on the fronts of pop-up cards because I'm trying to avoid any extra thickness. One last step for me is to use my heat gun to erase those marks from the friction pen. So that's our finished card. The front is pretty and simple, but on the inside, a really fun surprise, and there's plenty of room to write your message. I hope that you've enjoyed this dose of creativity today. If you have a chance to create this project, I would love to see it. You can tag me or share it in my Facebook group. If you're interested in Paper Pumpkin and don't have a demonstrator yet, I have a subscription link and all my other links in the description box below. I'm looking forward to seeing you the next time, and until then, have a great day.